Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. The government of Alberta unveiled more details as to how many COVID-19 vaccine doses are coming and when. We hear more from local business owners who discuss their challenges during the province of Alberta's latest COVID-19 restrictions. And we hear about a village in Western Canada that has embraced solar power and has achieved net zero status.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. The government of Alberta plans to start distributing the COVID-19 vaccine next week to frontline healthcare workers and caregivers. Health Minister Tyler Shandro says the first round of the vaccine will be given out next Wednesday. The 3,900 doses will go to intensive care unit doctors, nurses, respiratory therapists, and long-term care workers.
These staff are exhausted and they've put themselves at risk for 10 months. They need support and they need to know we're there for them. And I hope that seeing the immunizations begin will show them that there's light at the end of the tunnel. For them, for their patients, and most of all, for all of us throughout the province. And as we learn about how to manage and handle the vaccine, Pfizer is requiring that we begin by administering their vaccine only at the site of delivery at this time.
The Foothills Hospital and Peter Lougheed Centre in Calgary will be the initial vaccination sites, and in Edmonton, it'll be the Royal Alexandra and University of Alberta hospitals. Canadian Major General Danny Fortin, who's leading the Pfizer vaccine rollout logistics, says the first 249,000 doses will be administered initially at 14 sites across Canada, with more facilities coming online soon.
Pfizer indicated that they would be prepared to ship by Friday. So assuming Friday, we could see vaccines arrive Monday, probably Tuesday. We'll know more as we move forward in the next 36 hours. We just don't have that fidelity just yet. Pfizer will bring, with their third-party logistic provider, they will bring the vaccines to the points of use, to the 14 initial points of use. That is where the vaccines will be administered. Moving forward, as we learn more about the vaccine and the ability to transport it frozen, unfrozen, and so on, we'll be able to explore other options, and more points of use will be added to this.
Alberta Premier Jason Kenney is rejecting criticism that tough new COVID-19 restrictions have been imposed too late to bend the curve of the pandemic. Kenney called the suggestion from the opposition NDP and other critics Alberta bashing. The most recent restrictions ban all social gatherings, in-restaurant dining, and personal services. Retail businesses and places of worship have been reduced to 15% capacity.
These are decisions that we have arrived at not as a first resort, but as a last resort to protect lives and to preserve our healthcare system. Having said that, we recognize that the very real impact this will have on so many employers, on jobs, on small and medium-sized businesses in particular. And so our cabinet has also decided massively to expand urgent financial support, particularly for small and medium-sized enterprises. We are tripling immediately the Small and Medium Enterprise Relaunch Grant from $5,000. Actually, we're quadrupling it to $20,000.
The province announced today that over the past 24 hours, they've identified 1,566 new cases of COVID-19. The provincial positivity rate is around 9%. There are 20,163 active cases in Alberta. There are 682 Albertans in hospital, including 124 in the ICU. There are also 13 COVID-19 related deaths. Alberta's Chief Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Dina Hinshaw, says there are active alerts or outbreaks in 432 schools, which represents around 18% of the total schools in the province.
Currently, these schools have a combined total of 1,789 active cases. This number includes 113 schools on the watch list. Finally, today, I'd like to take a moment to talk about the holidays. I know the new restrictions on all indoor and outdoor social gatherings have disappointed many Albertans as we enter the holiday season. In a year filled with so many sacrifices, it seems unfair to ask for more. But as social gatherings are a leading cause of transmission, this is our only option.
City of Lethbridge officials offered an update earlier today as to how the city is enforcing the current face covering bylaw. The measure aimed at curbing the spread of COVID-19 has been extended until February 23rd. Officials also discussed the recent anti-mask protests which took place.
It is disappointing to see a small group of people act carelessly and without consideration as to how they harm others by ignoring and protesting against COVID restrictions. Those who oppose our face covering bylaw may have the right to express their opinion, but they do not have the right to put others at risk.
What we are doing is we continue to monitor social media and have discussions with the folks who are planning these events. And the message to them is don't do it, because we are going to be ready. And in as much as some individuals, which is a very few minority, don't agree with these rules for their own reasons, the way I look at it is they are putting community at risk. And they, in fact, are infringing on the rights and freedom of other citizens, which is really contradictory to why they are even planning these events.
Lethbridge City Council will discuss a potential extension to the current mandatory face covering bylaw at a meeting on February the 11th. Students in grades 7 through 12 are well into their second week of learning from home. Now this time around, however, teachers and principals are saying everyone has felt more prepared for that quick shift back to the online world. But what about students who need a more structured environment and don't perform as well learning from home? It turns out many schools have developed contingencies for students who may not have adapted so well.
Everybody's learning situation is different, and we want to just meet them wherever they're at and then help support them. And maybe that looks like they're having more communication one-on-one with the teacher during a break time, or they have another person in our building that they connect with.
So we have some students who call and talk directly with their teacher or with our support staff. We have some students who are receiving paper packages, and we have a drop-off system back and forth either to their houses, or else we have set up a drive-through window here at the school that kids can drop off their paper to pen work if technology isn't working out for them. We have been doing a lot better of a job now that we've had some time to prepare. And so I think that this time going out, they had advance notice. They know that we have a backup plan should they not have the technology or if the technology isn't a fit. And so I think that we've had actually really good success in staying connected with them this time around, much more so than what we had experienced last March, April, May, June.
Not just students and teachers, but many business owners have been impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic as well, including those who own car dealerships. Paul McDonald is a dealer principal with McDonald Nissan here in Lethbridge. He says there have been a number of challenges they've had to deal with.
The COVID issue we're dealing with right now is a challenge for all dealers and all businesses of making sure you've got very safety protocols, sanitization. That's just to name a couple, but it changes us in our online selling, in our pickup and delivery service, and anything from curbside pickup to anything to keep the customer safe and be comfortable coming in and dealing with us locally here in Lethbridge.
McDonald says the dealership provides customers with the option of pickup and delivery of vehicles and parts. They're also offering at-home vehicle test drives and appraisals. The provincial government announced new grant options this week for both small and medium-sized businesses, offering up to $20,000 in funding. Now, there's some business owners, however, who do not qualify, leaving them desperate for community support. Video journalist Ainsley O'Reilly spoke with one entrepreneur who's in a pretty tough position.
I haven't got a paycheck since February. It's the last time I got a paycheck.
Bradley Whalen is a father of 5 and a business owner, like many in Lethbridge, who are giving it their all just to keep the lights on. A second provincial shutdown has decimated businesses across Alberta, claiming to offer up to $20,000 in relief. But only if you qualify. Any business not operating before February 29th is excluded.
Trying to apply for those things when they want to see certain reductions in revenue is pretty much impossible, because we can't compare to revenue that would have existed last year, because we didn't exist last year.
In November, Coco Vanilla was paying out $2 for every $1 of revenue, so they turned to Facebook to fundraise. The restaurant didn't even raise $350 and even faced backlash.
even as far as somebody actually calling the restaurant and telling us that we should just close, that the community has spoken and they don't want us here, and that maybe it's time for us to just cut our losses and close.
Economic Development Lethbridge says they empathize with these businesses and urges the community to spend their money locally. If you can't afford it, share some positivity.
Engage with local business on social media, maybe write them a review, forward a promotion. There's lots of things that sometimes don't even involve spending money. The more we can do to keep the local business community going, now more than ever is the time to do that.
With the new provincial restrictions, dine-in won't be available at Coco Vanilla, but you can find other ways to support them through curbside pickup or delivery. You can also go to their website, cocovanilla.ca, where they've got various pop culture related gifts just in time for the holidays. For Bridge City News, I'm Ainsley O'Reilly.
It is the Canadian dream for some people to own their very own home, but making this dream a reality can be a huge financial hurdle. Loris Alexander introduces us to one Lethbridge couple who found a clever way of saving up for that huge down payment.
My husband and I were talking, and we've been saving for a house because we figure we're paying rent, so why can't we pay a mortgage? But of course, getting a down payment is a lot of money all up front. So we were trying to think of ways that we could supplement our income in what we're saving.
So a plan was birthed from that ambition, and Vera and her husband put a call out on social media for unwanted items to be donated.
I thought, hey, well, why don't we put it out there to see if anyone's got any items they want to donate, and say that any money that we make from selling their stuff would go towards our down payment.
Vera says between bills and daily expenses, saving for a lump sum can be challenging.
When you're working and you have your regular bills and you have your payments that you have to make on whatever your debts are, it's a large sum all at once. And so, with the kids having activities and food and things like that, it's just saving any little bit is hard. And so that's why kind of buying a house for us has never been in the cards up until recently.
Vera is hoping to purchase a home by spring 2021 and is motivated to make the Canadian dream a reality for her family.
You get out of it what you put into it. So for what I do, if you're posting a picture of something and that's it, you just post a little picture, a little description, and that's it, then you'll get the response that way. But if you take the time and you post it and put a little bit more effort in, I guess, be a little bit more specific and be more available, then you'll get a better response.
For Bridge City News, I'm Loris Alexander.
Operating electrically net zero is something most municipalities can only dream of. Now, for the village of Carman Gay, Alberta, however, this recently became a reality. As video journalist Micah Quinn explains, the village is hoping their new solar project will not only help them save money, but potentially bring in more industry.
$380,000. That's the total cost of the new solar power project for the village of Carman Gay. The village was able to achieve a net zero electric status thanks to a grant from the Municipal Climate Change Action Center.
This particular project with the village of Carman Gay participated this year and completed a 145 kilowatt system. And that project is just now wrapping up through the program, so they'll be receiving funding from the Alberta Municipal Solar Program, around $380,000 worth of funding.
There are 384 solar panels, and the project creates 213,765 kilowatt hours per year that is then brought back into the electrical grid. A Lethbridge solar energy company called 3B Energy completed the project.
And I called him, shared with him the program and the opportunities. We evaluated the the energy needs that they had for the village as far as all the municipal buildings, lift stations, those types of things, and developed a plan to put in place a system that would not only provide enough energy for their existing consumption, but also to plan for the future because they plan to build some new buildings and maybe even do a tiny home village.
The mayor of Carmangay, Stacey Hovde, says that this project is a great way to make the village greener and a new way to attract industry.
We are very excited about having the solar farm and being one of the very few to have an opportunity to have free energy available for the municipal infrastructure for the village.
The system is supposed to save $13,403 annually, and the grant payback period is 14 to 15 years, with a 25-year life cycle on the solar farm for the village. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
Well, congratulations to the village of Carmangay. Nice to see. Police in Calgary are warning pharmacy employees to take precautions following a rash of armed robberies. Reports say there have been 21 pharmacy robberies across Calgary since September, including a couple that occurred yesterday where staff were threatened with a gun. Detectives are working to determine if several individuals or groups are responsible for the robberies or if the increase is a general crime trend across the city. The Saskatchewan Health Authority is taking over the operations of a Regina care home, which is dealing with a major COVID-19 outbreak. Officials say the authority will run the day-to-day operations at Extended Care Parkside and overhaul how the facility is being staffed and run. A recent report says 149 residents at the 228-bed facility have the virus. 57 staff have tested positive and 11 people have died from COVID-19. Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe says it is not looking good that the province will ease restrictions on social gatherings in time for Christmas. The province announced 324 new cases today, bringing the total number of active cases to 4,682. Fortunately, almost 6,500 people have also recovered from the virus. Moe had suggested that current restrictions banning private gatherings of more than 5 people could be loosened if the virus was brought under control. NDP leader Ryan Miley says the Premier should have closed down non-essential businesses several weeks ago to stem the virus's spread in time for the holidays. The federal Liberals have introduced legislation that would spread voting over 3 days if there's a federal election during the pandemic. It would also make it easier to vote using mail-in ballots and add 2 weeks of advance polls to long-term care homes. Liberal MP Kevin Lamoureux says they want to get the bill passed quickly, but Elections Canada says it'll be ready no matter what.
I believe Elections Canada is predicting somewhere in the neighborhood of about 5 million people could be expected in terms of requesting the mail-in ballot. And as I say, the way in which the legislation operates, it'll make it easier for Canadians to receive that ballot. And it provides them options in terms of how it is that they can ensure that their vote is counted. So not only could it be dropped through the mail system, but it could also be brought to, for example, an advance poll or going on to Election Day where there will be a designation for that vote to be received.
Global Affairs Canada says contrary to earlier reports, the 2 Michaels being held captive in China are not being charged with spying and are not on trial. Canadian embassy officials in Beijing spoke directly with Chinese officials to clarify the media report. It says the confusion was caused by a Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson who gave an inaccurate characterization of the process. That person had been quoted as saying the 2 Michaels had been arrested, indicted, and tried. Kovrig's wife says knowing Canadians care and that people are fighting for his release makes her husband feel stronger and helps keep his hopes alive. That cold front has settled nicely into southwestern Alberta, hasn't it? Bringing cooler temperatures, and there's a chance of more snow developing as we move closer to the weekend. Full weather details are on deck. You know, if you're looking for more of the white stuff, you're in luck. Some flurries are on the way just in time for the weekend. Jeanette Rocher is here now with a full look at the weather forecast. Jeanette, prior to that, however, we'll see increased wind chill values?
Yeah, that's right. In fact, tonight we could feel those wind chill values of -18, even though we're going to be seeing an overnight low of -12. Into tomorrow morning as well, the wind chill will make it feel more like -17. Tomorrow's high, though, -7. Mix of sun and cloud for Friday. Into Saturday, sunshine back in the minus values there. -5 for Saturday, -10 expected on Sunday with a 30% chance of flurries. Mix of sun and cloud expected for Monday with a high of 1 degree. There's our plus temperature there for the week. Tuesday back down to -6 and -9 the expected high for Wednesday with also a 30% chance of flurries next Wednesday. So we're definitely dipping down there into those negative values. Average high for this time of year, 0. Average low, minus 11. 16 was our high temperature back in 1939, and in 2000, it was a chilly minus 33. Sun rose this morning at 8:18 a.m. and our sun set at 4:33 p.m. on our Thursday. So there we go. Days getting shorter and shorter until we reach that winter solstice coming up. Chance of showers tomorrow in Vancouver, high of 6 degrees. 7 degrees is expected to be in Victoria. Minus 6 the high for Edmonton with a mix of sun and cloud. Calgary's high minus 7 as well. Mix of sun and cloud there too. They're also going to feel those wind chilled back values in both of those Alberta cities. We are on the prairies, it's what we expect, right? Minus 6 the expected high in Saskatoon tomorrow, minus 8 in Regina, and minus 4 in Winnipeg with a mix of sun and cloud. There too, they will also feel those wind chill values. Now, as we look further east into central Canada here, Toronto will see increasing clouds tomorrow. 8 degrees is the high, 6 the high in Ottawa with a chance of showers. Mix of sun and cloud tomorrow expected in Montreal with a high of 5. They are expecting a mixed bag of precipitation coming on the weekend though, but not quite yet for Friday. They should see that by Saturday. Mix of sun and cloud expected for both Fredericton and Halifax tomorrow. Highs of 1 and 2 degrees in those cities. Charlottetown could see some flurries with a high of 0. St. John's also will see quite a bit of snow, and along the coast more like rain. 1 degree is expected to be their high. So there you go. That is your forecast.
Canada's budget watchdog is raising red flags over the lack of details in the Liberal government's $100 billion stimulus plan. Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland says the plan will help Canada recover from the COVID-19 pandemic by opening spending taps over the next 3 years to build a greener and more inclusive economy. But Budget Officer Yves Giroux says he's concerned by the lack of detail and that it exposes the government to significant lobbying. The Liberals have said that they cannot provide more details because the funds will start to roll out only after the pandemic is under control and the economy is ready for new investments to boost jobs and growth. Sobeys parent company is reporting a second quarter profit of $161.4 million. That is up from the $154.6 million a year ago. Empire also says its quarterly sales rose from nearly $6.44 billion last year to almost $7 billion this year. The company announced plans earlier today to launch Voilà curbside grocery pickup in Alberta next year. It will then begin home delivery service from a new customer fulfillment center to be built in Calgary in 2023. The U.S. Federal Trade Commission is suing Facebook to unwind its acquisitions of Instagram and WhatsApp. These are the deals the government say were part of a campaign to illegally crush competition. The lawsuits seek court orders unwinding Facebook's purchase of Instagram and WhatsApp. The case represents the biggest regulatory attack against Facebook in the company's history. The investigations into the companies began in the summer of 2019 after the Justice Department and the FTC agreed on a plan to divide up scrutiny of Facebook, Google, Amazon, and Apple. A report released in October determined the 4 companies are abusing their market power as gatekeepers over the digital economy. Sony will be buying anime streaming service Crunchyroll from AT&T for a cool $1.175 billion. With the acquisition, the company will have tremendous power over anime in North America at a time when many other media outlets are trying to figure out their anime content. Netflix is another company that also invested heavily in both producing and licensing its own anime content. Crunchyroll has a passionate fan base of over 3 million subscribers and 90 million registered users. Experts say combining the strength of Crunchyroll along with Sony's Funimation will be an incredible win for the anime world, elevating the art and culture of this medium for decades to come. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was up 33 points on the day to finish at 17,593. The Dow was down 69 points to 29,999. The S&P 500 was down 4 points to 3668. And the Nasdaq was up 66 points to 12,405. West Texas Intermediate Oil was up $1.45 to $46.97 US per barrel. Natural gas was up 13 cents to $2.57 US. Gold was up 11 cents to $18.3669 US an ounce. And silver was even on the day at $24 US an ounce. Wheat is at $269 per metric ton. Barley's at $272, canola's at $5.91, and corn is at $291 per metric ton. Live cattle were up 88 cents to $111.85. Feeder cattle were up 58 cents to $137.60, and lean hogs were down $1.18 to $65.10. The Canadian dollar was down slightly over the past 24 hours to 78.48 US. Recapping one of our top stories this hour, the province plans to start distributing the COVID-19 vaccine next week to frontline healthcare workers and caregivers. Alberta Health Minister Tyler Shandro says the first round of the vaccine will be given out next Wednesday. The 3,900 doses will go to intensive care unit doctors, nurses, respiratory therapists, and long-term care workers. Socialism is a term that's been discussed quite a bit lately, especially among millennials. Coming up, a discussion with the president of Summit Ministries, Dr. Jeff Myers, who says young people embracing socialism is a very dangerous trend. That Q&A with Jeanette Roche is on deck.
Many Christians in the U.S. got actively involved to influence the presidential election to get a government elected that would uphold biblical principles. However, today's guest suggests that unless something changes in the way young people view the world, future elections might not produce a very godly government. We're joined by Dr. Jeff Myers, president of Summit Ministries based out of Colorado and author of Unanswered Questions, available at summit.org. Jeff Myers, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. Yeah, glad to be with you.
All right. So, Dr. Myers, can you first of all just tell us a little bit about yourself and your ministry, maybe your background?
You bet. Summit Ministries is a training program for young adults that equips them, a rising generation, to embrace God's truth and to champion a biblical worldview. That's the heart of what we do. So we are wanting to train leaders for our nation who think biblically. The program has been in existence for 58 years. I've had the privilege to be the president for 9 years. I attended as a student way back in the day when I was considering graduating high school and considering leaving the church. Came to a Summit Ministries 2-week-long training program. Founder David Noble. I said to him, "I hope you have a lot of answers, but I have a lot of questions." I was so arrogant, and he said to me, "At Summit, we aren't afraid of questions." And I realized I was in the community of people where I could really ask the tough questions about my faith and about the world and everything else. For the first time, I felt like I found a place as a Christian in our age.
Okay, so that's amazing. Now, you spend a lot of time mentoring youth and training up youth leaders, but you say that there's not much of a difference right now between the way young adults who are in the church think about the world compared to young adults who aren't in the church. So can you give us maybe some examples of this?
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. I have the privilege to work with about 40,000 young people here. These are pretty intensive programs, so it's a lot of mentoring. A few years ago, I began that young adults in the church and young adults outside of the church were very little different. So, for instance, 69% of church-going young adults today say they believe there are no absolute truths, that they are the ones who decide for themselves what is right and what is wrong. Then another thing began to emerge when socialism began to really reemerge as a force in our nation. So many young adults were telling me, "Oh yeah, I think it's a great idea. I really love it." And we did some studies on this and found that young adults are 5 times as likely to have a Marxist worldview as their older counterparts in church. So in both social areas, and political and economic areas, they have decided, I am the one who decides what's right and wrong. I'm the one who decides what is true, right? So you take those things and put them together, and you end up in some really weird conversations. I would have a conversation with someone and I would say, "Well, that's not what socialism is. Look at all the failures." And they say, "But I'm the one who decides what is true for me. And so I know what I want socialism to be. Therefore, that's what it is."
Interesting. So you're saying that socialism is becoming kind of more of a view of the young people. So far left socialism used to be frowned upon by the average American. So what's changed and why? Is it just kind of that viewpoint of the younger generation, do you think?
I think it is. The younger generation didn't have the experience that I had growing up. Now, if you go back in American history to the 1920s and 1930s, socialism was very popular. Even far left radical socialism was very popular. Fascism became popular in the United States of America. Adolf Hitler had his admirers here, even people who were working in the presidential administration. because they thought that guy knows how to get things done, right? So what happened after World War II is the rise of international communism. And in China and in the Soviet Union and in other places, there was wholesale slaughter of people to the point where one scholar said possibly up to 360 million people have been killed at the hands of their own government in the 20th century. 360 million people. It's wholesale slaughter in the 20th century. I saw that, right? So I remember being in high school and seeing videos of parades of military equipment and realizing the Soviet Union has enough nuclear weapons to destroy the world 15 times over. None of the young adults I'm working with have ever had that experience. As far as they know, socialism is just what, respectable countries in Scandinavia do. And so it's really no problem at all. We should have more of that here. They don't see the tie-in between the Marxist ideology and the socialist mindset.
Interesting. So is there any way that, do you think that almost the definition of socialism could change just based on the new world viewpoint of it? Is that a possibility?
Well, keep in mind, you've got an entire generation of young people who think that whatever they want to have happen is what is true. So they don't believe that Bernie Sanders is a person who does whatever he does. He's whatever they want him to, based on how they feel about themselves. So they don't. So I think the problem with the socialist worldview is that it's based on Marxism, which is based on materialism. Only the material world exists. There's no heaven, there's no hell, there's no God, no Jesus, no Holy Spirit, nothing outside of the material world. It's the physical world. You have trees, then you have wealth. You have mines, then you have wealth. And if there's only so much to go around and one person has more, that means they stole it. So it's not wrong to take it back from them because they stole it in the first place. What the young adults I'm working with today have completely missed is that wealth grows through good ideas, through innovation, through inspiration. So a lot of what we do at Summit Ministries is not just trying to say, hey, you believe this about socialism, that's bad. We say, here is what a mindset based on scripture could lead us to. Great ideas, innovation, inspiration, opportunities to overcome problems, not just by redistributing wealth, but by changing everything in the way we operate based on a biblical worldview. We try to give them that vision.
Where are today's youth getting these ideas from?
Well, mostly social media, mostly social. And I know this because this last summer we did our programs virtually. We did a lot of polls. So I have polls from hundreds and hundreds of students, and I asked them, where do you think most people get their ideas? And about 65 or so percent say people get their ideas from social media. 1% get their ideas from church. 1%. So next to social media, it's friends. Next to friends, it's family or the news, something like that. But the church has almost no influence on these young adults, and these are mostly Christian young adults we're talking about.
And are they not learning the proper history in school?
I don't think I guarantee you they're not getting a proper history in school because I have reviewed all of the textbooks. And it's tragically, it's woefully inadequate in explaining anything from the standpoint of reality, not necessarily from a biblical view, but just what is real? How do we know? I mean, how could somebody look at a country like the Soviet Union and say, oh, I guess Marxism's really not that bad? But how could they look at China or Venezuela even and say, oh, it's not really that bad? I mean, you have to have decided ahead of time that you're going to be a deceiver when you write that textbook in order to come up with the kinds of things that people have come up with.
Wow. Okay, so you mentioned before that statistics show that 69% of evangelical youth who attend church don't believe in absolute truth, right? And you agree that so these young people are believing now that if their beliefs offend someone, then their beliefs might be wrong, right? So why do you think that absolute truth matters?
I think absolute truth matters in the world of ideas in the same way that gravity matters in the world of physics. You have to take it into account. I just love seeing the picture of that water tower grill. I want to go there and eat sometime. But if I decided I'm going to stand up on that thing and I'm going to jump off, I'm going to just jump off of the edge. The law of gravity says that I will go down, not up. Even if I feel like I want to go up, I'm going to go down, not up. You don't break the law of gravity, you just prove the law of gravity, right? In the same way, the idea of a moral absolute truth is that truth does exist. Justice is a real thing. It's not just something that is a concept that I can have if I can make myself more powerful. That love is a real thing, that the kingdom of God exists, that spiritual realities are just as real as physical realities. That's at the heart of a biblical worldview. It's also at the heart of a generally philosophical worldview. I did a doctorate in philosophy. That was my academic training. And philosophers all get this, but very few other people do. So absolutely recognize that there is truth and you are not it, is at the heart of living a good life.
Okay. And you were saying that apparently only 19% of church-going, born-again Christians have that biblical worldview. So how would you define a biblical worldview?
Well, a biblical worldview is a pattern of ideas that starts with God exists. Because God exists, we can know what is real. Because we can know what is real, we can know what is right and what is wrong. Because we can know what is right and what is wrong, we can know how to form a flourishing society. We can know how to be mentally healthy, so forth. It applies to every area of life. It starts with Jesus Christ. That Jesus is at the center of it all, and everything else, as John Stott said, is circumference. When you start with that Jesus is at the heart of it, Jesus was the creator of the world, you actually, even though you're starting off with things that people say, that's just so crazy, you're talking about miracles and all of that. But if you start off with that, you end up with a view of the world that is more reasonable, rational, intelligent, and true than if you take a worldview based on, say, secular or materialist assumptions. That's how I define it.
And then what about unbiblical views? Can those be turned around?
I think unbiblical views can be turned around if we recognize what they are. So, for instance, a worldview that's very influential in my country and in yours is the worldview of secularism. Secularism essentially says, look, there may be a God, probably not. People who believe in him are crazy, but they have the freedom to do it. But even if God does exist, he's not relevant to anything else that is important. It's not relevant to how we live our lives, not relevant to our culture, programs we produce on television, governments that we have at the local, provincial, federal level, or whatever else. God is not relevant. So a lot of believers embrace that worldview implicitly. Say, oh, sure, well, yeah, I believe in God, and I have an experience with him every Sunday morning, but that doesn't affect anything else. That mindset has got to shift. We realize that God is not just something that we add on to our lives, that if what he says in the Bible is true, then it becomes the basis for everything else.
Now, you'd mentioned that culture is influencing our youth today. So what advice do you have for parents?
Hmm. My main advice for parents is you want to be sure you're helping your children get a training in the world. You should assume that they have questions that they have not found good answers to about their faith. How do we know there really is a God? How do we know that the world is created rather than it just evolved through random chance processes? How do we know that Jesus really did rise from the dead? How could there be a good God if there is evil in the world? Every young adult I know is asking those kinds of questions. And if they aren't getting answers in church, then they're going to assume it's because the church doesn't have the answers. You've got to train them in a biblical worldview. We can help. Summit Ministries, summit.org. There are a lot of other organizations too that will help you. Apologetics and worldview training are a big part of. There's a lot of programming on the internet. There are a lot of ways that you can get that training for your kids, but I believe it's absolutely vital today.
Yeah, so what would you say to parents who have teens who are simply not interested in what the parents have to say? Not interested in listening to them, what they're trying to teach them?
Oh, but that doesn't actually happen. Just sorry. Yeah. So what do you do if your children are not interested? I think you have the conversation with them that you would have if you were trying to get them to say stop using drugs, and say, in your current situation, you may not see everything that you need to see for the future of your life. I want to be walking alongside of you, helping you. I need you to trust me that this is something we need to do. So many parents will tell me, I sent my child to a Summit Ministries program for 2 weeks. They did not want to go. 2 or 3 days later, they called and said, "This is the best thing that's ever happened to me. Thank you." At this point, you have to learn to be a parent, because your children have friends, and their friends may not be leading them in the right direction. Just having you as their friend is not enough. You've got to be the one to say, look, I can see farther down the road because I've been there through my own mistakes and through things that I did right. And I need to give you this direction.
Right. So it does become, it's very important for parents to know who their children are befriending and perhaps even intervene, right? If to discourage them from befriending them. So how do you do that? Especially for the older kids.
I think for the older kids, I continue to try to find new friend groups for my kids. So I get them involved in different activities. We'd get together with those families, part of it. If I noticed there was a child at school that my son was a friend with, then I would get to know that family and have them over and do different things. So it's all part of building the community. When friends go bad, it's because our children are developing friendships that are outside of any kind of a positive community. We have to be the ones to create that. You can't just assume that the person who lives down the block, because it's a nice little neighborhood, also has the same values that you have. You've got to get to know them and have those discussions and talk. Essentially, you're discipling other people, even as you're discipling those who influence your children.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Jeff Myers, it looks like we are running out of time here, but Dr. Jeff Myers, president of Summit Ministries based out of Colorado and author of Unquestioned Answers. You can find that at summit.org along with many other resources, as you were saying, right? Thank you so much for being with us today.
Absolutely happy to do it.
Many of you watching today have either experienced the tragedy of suicide in your own family or you know someone who has. Today's guest has an incredible, powerful story to share with us. Tamara LaRue is the co-founder of Life Change International and author of A Second Chance at Heaven, and she joins me now via Skype from Houston, Texas. Tamara, welcome to BCN.
Thank you, Hal. It's good to be here.
Can you briefly share your story? While still in high school, you tried to commit suicide. In reality, you should not be here with us today, right?
That's true. And anyone who has made it through high school knows that the ups and downs can be quite crazy every day in high school. And one of the things that we talk about is in my season of high school really didn't play a part, I don't believe, in my suicide. It was elongated. It was an elongated journey of feeling empty, feeling rejected over and over and over, ever since I was 4 years old, going through the brokenness of a home, going through just having a void that could not be filled. And high school certainly added to it with the ups and downs of the social acceptances. And I had a lot of friends in high school. And I was part of each group in high school. And so it was quite surprising to people because they did not know how I was silently suffering inside. And that's why I appreciate you allowing me to come on and share, because we have millions of people who are silently suffering in depression and contemplating suicide because they're so broken on the inside and they don't have anywhere to turn.
You know, psychologists I've spoken with in the past, they say when people talk about suicide all the time, those aren't the ones you should be concerned about. It's the ones who are quiet and you don't hear from.
That's true. And oftentimes psychologists label people who go through depression, suicide as a mental state, or it's a mental problem. And I personally disagree. I believe it is more of a spiritual problem before it becomes a mental and emotional problem. And until we address the spiritual issues that actually forms our thought process, and our thoughts form our emotions. And if we don't go down to the foundation of our spiritual condition, we will not be able to provide solutions for people who are suffering from depression.
Now, Tamara, you actually shot yourself. Where did you shoot yourself?
I did. I wanted how to definitely accomplish my goal. There was no turning back for me. I was in such a state of hopelessness and despair. I was so empty. I could not imagine living life any longer with the pain and agony I felt. And so I took a 38 caliber gun and I placed it at my heart. And that 38 caliber gun missed my heart less than a fourth of an inch.
Wow.
Say that it is an absolute miracle. They have no idea why I am alive and survived it.
Now, you actually saw heaven and hell?
I did, Hal. I actually, when I took that 38 caliber gun and placed it at my chest and the gun went off, I experienced becoming blind and becoming deaf. And my soul left my body and I began traveling faster than the speed of light. And I began falling and falling and falling. And I landed in this place. It was hell. And many people doubt that the place exists, but I am here to testify that it is a very real place. And it is a place of torment that you cannot explain. The emotional pain that I was in is not even a speck of sand compared to the torment that is in that place. It is horrific. There are no words to describe the suffering. It was every molecule of my being was being tortured. It was like an acidic burn that was being poured all over my head from the inside out and the outside in. And all you could do was scream in agony and in being tortured.
Now, you also got a glimpse of heaven as well. And did you see Jesus?
That's the biggest question everyone always asks me is, did I see Jesus? You know, when you are outside of your body, the veil of the physical world is ripped off. And my knowledge was made complete. I knew who God was. I knew that Jesus Christ was the King. I knew from that point on that everything that I was experiencing was because of the absence of his presence. I could look out across the great divide and I could see heaven. I could see all of heaven and I could see the Lord upon the throne, but I was not allowed to see things in detail. And I was crying out and screaming out in agony for the Lord to send somebody back to earth to tell them the truth. And everybody around me, there were people all through hell that you could see as far as the eye would take you that were screaming out in the same capacity. And the only thing that mattered was that Jesus Christ was Lord. I knew every sin that they had committed. I knew their lineage. I knew where they were from. Every knowledge, all I had to do was think a thought and my knowledge was made full. And so when I could look out again across and I could see the heavens, I knew that the very presence of God himself was what my heart was longing for. And I cried out for that and begged God to forgive me.
So Tamara, when you took that gun, put it to your chest, pulled the trigger, your mother found you? What happened when she did?
She did. She came in and she found me, and it was no mother should ever have to go through. It was horrific for her. And when she found me, she called the ambulance. And when they got there, they were like, are you even going to bother to take her to the hospital? Because I was gray with a pallor of death. But what they didn't know was that I had left hell. God had actually picked me up when I was there, took me across the heavens, and had brought me back. And so now I was alive and I was filled with hope because I knew the truth. And my mom was absolutely devastated. And I was reassuring her that everything is going to be okay. And she was like, no, you're dying. And I was like, no, I'm okay. Because I knew I had already experienced death and had been given a second chance to live.
Wow. Now, you write in your book, A Second Chance at Heaven, that there was nothing unusual about the day you finally decided to kill yourself. What led to that decision finally? Was it the depression? No escape?
It was the no escape. It was the reality that no matter what I do, no matter what I try, the void on the inside of me will not go away. I cannot fill this void because I didn't understand that it's a relationship with God. It's this presence of the Holy Spirit that actually fills that void. And I knew God existed, but I didn't have that relationship. I didn't surrender my heart to his lordship. And I didn't understand it's the pursuit of righteousness that fills that void. And so being desperate, I had decided that I don't know what will fill this void, and I cannot live life this empty, this broken, and in torment forever.
Now, you say that your father never totally rejected you, but his actions left a distinct impression. How so?
Well, he was busy. You know, he was a father of 6 children, and he was at work. He was a workaholic. He worked all the time. I lived in a different city, And when I was around him, it was all about work. It was all about the other kids. It was all about his schedule. And I never felt like I belonged. I always felt like a stranger in my own house because of that lack of connection that I had with my father and with the rest of my family.
Now, there are many young people who feel overwhelmed by the circumstances of life, Tamara. Why do some people find ways to cope with it while others struggle? What do you think?
I believe it's the spiritual foundation that each individual has. Where they know where to turn to, when they know that God not only listens, but he definitely answers prayer. I believe it's having people that are encouraging you to follow after righteousness. And people who do not have that end up going down a farther darker end because they don't have the answer. And the answer isn't, oh, just go to church, learn about God. The answer is get on your knees and develop a relationship with God. And I believe those who are able to overcome depression, overcome suicidal thoughts, are those who understand how to take the word and renew their mind and become transformed by the power of God's word.
Recent statistics say that suicide is up among women in North America. Why do you believe it's increasing?
I believe there's several factors that are involved in why it is increasing. I believe we're having an identity crisis. Women don't know where to find their identity. When you have pornography on a rise, you have drug addiction on a rise, you have sexual abuse on a rise in astronomical numbers. Women are looking at Hollywood. They think that they're supposed to be sex symbols. They find their identity through a career and through a job. And through these misconcepts, these false perceptions, they don't know that their identity is found in Christ. It's found in their Creator. And I believe that causes a deep depression because they don't have a sense of belonging, a sense of value. And when you realize the love that God has for you, the value that you have in God, it completely changes your perception.
Now, as you look back, is there anything your mom or friends could have done differently to prevent you from taking the action that you did?
I don't believe so because, as I was saying earlier, my problem was more spiritual than before it was mental and emotional. And until I took full responsibility of who and what I choose to become, the choice is mine, life and death. And until I chose life, I was suffering on the inside. And there is no relationship, there is no human being that can meet my spiritual needs. It only comes through the Holy Spirit and through Christ. And so I can't expect other people to fulfill the need that only God can fill.
Tamara, let me ask you something. Do you have children yourself? And if so, how old are they?
I do. I have 3 children. I have a grown son who's in his early 30s, and I have 2 teenage girls.
There you go. So what message would you give to your teenage girls so they don't take the same path that you took?
I encourage them that they are loved, to know how much they are loved, not only by me, not only by the words of the people around them, but by who their Creator is. I teach them value, and I teach them to follow the words of truth and righteousness and not what people say.
How does a person's belief system really impact their quality of life?
I think it makes a complete difference. Their quality of life, whether you choose life or you choose death, you choose poverty, whatever you're choosing in life determines your thought process. And when you are a Christ follower and you believe his promises, you believe that he has promised to have goodness for you laid out. It doesn't mean we're not going to go through difficult situations. It doesn't mean we're not going to go through trials and through problems, but those promises are real. And when you believe in those promises, then you have hope. You have your answer. You know that no matter what you're facing, goodness is on the other side. And when you don't have that source, you don't have anything solid to stand on.
When you tried to take your own life, did you notice that people treated you differently, maybe kept their distance, or were they more supportive?
Absolutely, we're not more supportive. The stigma of suicide stuck with me for a really long time, even today, because I am so vocal upon it. But I know the truth, and knowing the truth truly sets you free. And I don't live by the opinion of men. I live to the audience of one. And knowing that it is my goal is to please my Heavenly Father, is to please my Lord and Savior, gives me the confidence to go forward. It gives me the ability to look past people's judgment and look at them from compassion because they don't understand. And those that have walked this journey understand. And so it opens up an opportunity for me to share how to overcome on a every basic day-to-day level, overcoming the problems of life, and being able to take the word and apply it in a realistic sense, and not it be some fairy tale, but that it's real.
Now, the name of your book is called A Second Chance at Heaven. You say we all need second chances, Tamara. What would you say to a person struggling with self-esteem or a sense of hopelessness?
I would tell them that there is an answer, and the answer is found in not knowing that God is real, but surrendering your heart to His Lordship, picking up the Word and finding every promise that God has made to you and believing in it, believing that it is for you, believing that you're loved, because there is a solution to every problem that you are going through. And there are greener pastures on the other side.
And what advice would you give to parents who have teenagers who may also have suicidal tendencies or thoughts?
I would encourage them to lead their children in having a relationship with God, teaching them to go to the scriptures, studying the scriptures, reading the book of Proverbs, reading Psalms, reading those scriptures that tell us how to live life, give us the instructions of life, showing us how to love, and being able to open our hearts to receive God's love, and instructing their children in the ways of righteousness, because that is truly where the answers are found, is in following after righteousness.
Tamara LaRue is the author of A Second Chance at Heaven. Thanks for joining me today via Skype from Houston, Texas.
Thank you.
On behalf of all of us here at BCN, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless, and thanks so much for watching.